And we're
Oh,
live.
hello, Professor.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good, man. I'm glad you. Thank you for coming on and doing this with me.
Of course, man. You called. I have to answer. That's the rules, man. That's friendship.
Well, if you don't mind, man, why don't you go tell everybody your name and your rank and where you're training at?
Man, those are hard questions. Uh, no, my name is Jonathan Alvarez. I actually train and teach out of Gracie Barra Scottsdale. I am fortunate enough to be a black belt under my professor Flavio. Yeah, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 14 years. I'm originally from Miami, but I moved here to Arizona about 2.5 years ago now.
Okay,
So happy move.
awesome.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, I mean, you said 14 years ago. Where did you start out? I mean, tell me about your journey and who you've been training under.
So when I first started jiu-jitsu, I actually started through like an MMA gym because I had a cousin who was a Golden Gloves boxer, a female Golden Gloves boxer, and I was sick when I was a kid. I had a tumor in my head,
Okay.
and I had to get it removed, and I couldn't do any physical activity through much of my youth. So when I was around 14 years old, I ended up at like 13, 14, I had surgery to get my tumor removed and everything. And then after I got it removed, I was like, I need to do something to like kind of get stronger because I feel really weak. I had like a lot of anxiety. I was like really timid and twitchy. Like people would come to greet me with a high five and I would like flinch. So I just did the most extreme thing I could think of, which I went to an MMA gym called I think it's called the Freestyle Academy or something like that. My cousin worked there, and I went to my first class, and they taught 5 minutes of every martial art. Basically, they did like this is kickboxing, this is jujitsu, this is judo, this is wrestling. Kind of like your intro class was like a little bit of everything, and after a very wicked class and a long time throwing up. Yeah, it's the truth, man. I grew up, and then after all that time, the only one that really made sense to me because of how frail and skinny and like weak I was jujitsu. So I started there, and then I was like, okay, like I want to like try to get more specialized than just that because it's the only one that made sense to me. So after I figured that out, I went to a Brasa gym, so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a team called Brasa under Damian Maia.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Okay.
Yeah, so I was there for a considerable amount of time. And then after training there for a considerable amount of time, I found that gym wasn't really the right fit for me. And I made really good friends with a guy by the name of Braulio Estima, and he directed me to Gracie Barra. And I trained at Gracie Barra Miami for many, many years. Most of my time in jiu-jitsu has been with Gracie Barra. I competed the most under Gracie Barra, and then after that, the instructor of that Gracie Barra gym, he actually had some differences with Gracie Barra, and he separated. And I stayed with him for about a year or two after that. And then when I moved to Arizona, I talked to Braulio, and he told me it's time to come home, and that was where I came. So when I came here, I was like, there was no going to different gyms. I just walked into Gracie Barra. I saw Professor Victor, and I said, man, this is the team. Sign me up. There was no class, man. I signed up, and I put on my gi, and that's it. I was in.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, did you get to train with Braulio at all, or?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time during my blue belt and my purple belt training with him. He had a school in West Palm Beach that he would travel to pretty regularly. And he also was fighting MMA at one point. So he would go to the Black Zillions at like the Jocko Training Center, which was in Boca Raton. And I would go out there too. So whenever he'd come to seminars, whenever he'd go teach at his school in West Palm Beach, I would go and train with him. Honestly, a huge part of my jiu-jitsu is because of Braulio Estima, like, to be honest with you.
That's awesome, man. I've never actually had the honor to train with him. But man, I hear that he's very, very technical.
Man, it's crazy. It's like I think there's like two kinds of pressure someone can put on you. Like one of them is like a slab of concrete, like big, heavy, like unmovable, like
Yeah.
And I felt that with Damian Maya. When I trained with Damian Maya, his pressure was just like that. He was like a concrete slab.
Wow.
But the thing about Braulio was you wouldn't feel like you had weight on you, but you couldn't move him, and it was like mud was on top of you. You know, like every little, it's like a giant pile of quicksand and mud
Oof.
is on top of you, suffocating you while he's on top of you. And that was like, man, to this day, I strive every day to try to do that when I train with people when I'm on top, you know?
Man, that does not sound fun at all.
No, it's not an amusement park.
All right. So how long have you been teaching now?
Matt, you know what? It's funny. I actually started teaching probably 2 years into jiu-jitsu. I was a blue belt, and I was teaching kids classes, you know, and then since, you know, the big thing about teaching for me was like, I really found it so rewarding because, man, I got to tell you, Tino, I was like not meant to be good at jiu-jitsu. I swear, like I was getting destroyed for like a year and a half, 2 years straight, like not a single victory, not a single anything, not a single positive moment really. And I felt really, really bad. I think like I had probably one of the worst white belts ever because it's just like me getting obliterated, especially like in the old school way. Everybody comes for your neck, no matter who you are, you know, everybody comes for the kill, no matter who you are. I think luckily we've kind of got some balance now, but like for me, the big thing was teaching made it so that I had the power to make people who were as incapable as I was suddenly be a little bit more capable, man. And that's like the most important thing in the world to me, man, because I used to be a really incapable person with a lack of confidence, a lot of fear, not a lot of friends, like a lot of anxiety. And then I was able to kind of make it out of that. And I kind of want, like my greatest goal in jiu-jitsu is to give people happiness and peace of mind and mental fortitude, you know? So like for me, since I started, I never wanted to stop. I always wanted to keep teaching so that I could empty my glass into someone else, you know?
And when I first got to Scottsdale and I first saw you, man, they're like, everybody asked, like, have you rolled with Jonathan? Because you were a brown belt then. And they're like, have you rolled with Coach Jonathan yet? Have you rolled with Coach Jonathan? I was like, no, like, I haven't even seen this guy anywhere. And and then when I saw you, I was like, oh, God, he's big. Like, he works out. And that's when you had your long hair, too. Yeah, your hair was like, I was like, oh, my God. And they're like, no, he's really nice. I'm like, are you sure? Like, I asked Professor Victor, I was like, you sure he's nice? He's like, oh, Jonathan, he's a love guy. He's very nice. He loves everybody. I'm like, but you see his tattoos and his long hair? I was like, this guy looks like a villain from a street game. And then when I met you, man, it's just been all laughs and smiles. And all the students I've ever taught to, and it still taught you from Scottsdale, they're always the same thing about you. That you're very positive, you're very detailed. So, man, where does that come from? That you're always so positive, and to come to Scottsdale or to come anywhere and teach, man. Where does that come from?
Man, like I really think it comes to the fact that when I started jiu-jitsu, I hated myself. I was so sad and I was so depressed, and like I'm very open. I'm a really, you know me, Tino, I'm a really open book when it comes to like my negatives and my bad moments. Like I just say it, life is too short, you know, like I had to deal with my mortality at a pretty young age. And I think that I heard a quote once, it was about Robin Williams, and it was, it was saying sometimes the saddest people are the ones who try to make you laugh the most because they know what it feels like to feel pain, and they just want people to feel happiness. And like, for me, I felt so down and so low before. Like I've had my mental health in just a bad place before. And I'm really happy that I'm in a really like healthy place these days. And like, I'm not going through that level of difficulty at this point in time. But I know that on any given day, man, like somebody needs a friend. And if I am in a place to be that friend, I'm going to try to do that, because for a long period of my life, I didn't have anybody who reached out to be my friend. And then luckily jiu-jitsu gave me an outlet to meet people that helped me, meet amazing people like you, amazing people like Victor, and like, I don't know, I take life really like a second at a time, because you know what, today is good, but tomorrow could be bad.
Yeah.
And if I do the right things by you, when tomorrow's bad for me, I know that Tino is going to come and be like, hey, man, like, I'm here for you. Like, smile, be happy. A laugh can save a life, man. And I really feel that.
Yeah,
So
for
that's where it
sure.
comes from.
Yeah, man. You know, when I was on the mats and I would look over and just, man, that was like for me to see somebody to look and say, hey, you know, that's that man's happy spot. Like that's their happiest because you see like the big grin, big smile, so enthusiastic. And I was always like, you know, I would help, you know, Professor Ryan, you know, but I'll be like, you know, what's Coach Jonathan showing over there? Like, he was
Man,
so
dude,
happy,
why is
man.
going to get jealous, man? Don't be.
No, he was. He was. He's like, we're doing the fundamentals in the advanced class. For everybody who doesn't know, Gracie Barra Scottsdale has a huge mat space. And
Yeah.
they would split the mat in half. And they would have the fundamentals. And I was assistant coach there. And so it'd be me and Professor Ryan. And on the other side, it would be, you know, Professor Victor or now, you know, Professor Jonathon. And it was so funny to see the lines, you know, and there would be like blue belts every now and then would be with the fundamentals. But when every time, you know, Coach Jonathan or Professor Jonathan now was teaching, man, it was just all white belts. Everybody was 3 stripes and above was all. You know, so I was like, oh, okay, it's all right, cool.
Man, I don't know, man. I really, for me, jujitsu really, you know, like everybody always says, like, jujitsu saved my life. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like we've all heard that sentence, right? And I'm not saying that's not the case for a lot of people, but like honestly, man, if I didn't end up doing jujitsu, I probably wouldn't be alive. I probably wouldn't have had a lot of the support systems and a lot of like the confidence that I have now. And like I really feel like I might not be here if for jujitsu. You know, like I think like I had when I was, especially when I was sick, I think one of the big things was like when I was sick and I had to like undergo treatments and stuff. I was like in 6th, 7th grade, man, and that's like your mental fortitude is not that great at that age. If it is, then I mean, fantastic for you, but mine's wasn't. And I think the only thing that kept me going, you know, whenever I was feeling really bad or whenever I had to go to doctor's appointments, get checked out, was like, I'm gonna make it out of this, and like I'm gonna become like this awesome like MMA fighter, jiu-jitsu guy. I saw the UFC and I was like, that seems like the most extreme thing in the world. And like, if I make it out of this, I'm gonna try, you know, I'm gonna try to do that. And like, even just the thought of it made me go like, yeah, like I can do this. And then when I got into it and I spent my year and a half to 2 years of physical punishment that was mandatory at that point in time, you know, I was like, I'm gonna make it past this because I made it past something else. I'm gonna make it past this. And then when the next stage came, I went, okay, I'm gonna make it past this too, because it's the same recipe, right? And I think that that's like something real. I think that like that's systematically what makes jiu-jitsu so special. And I think that if you stop doing that, you'll stop getting good at jiu-jitsu. So if you go, I'm in my comfort zone, that's it, then you're just going to have the same jiu-jitsu for the rest of your life. You should always go, let me do this thing I'm not good at. I'm going to get past it. I don't care if I'm bad at it. I'm going to get past it. And that's the same with all parts of life. So for me, man, when I teach, I feel like I'm not just teaching people moves or how to defend themselves, like, which is obviously super important to me. Yeah. But I'm also kind of teaching people how to like survive out here in this world, especially in this time that we're going through. I think that's like super important to like help people through that.
Yeah. So, you know, talking about this whole virus thing, you know, how do you, you know, we were talking about it earlier before we went on, you know, to the video of teaching, you know, how do you feel, you know, how you doing with the, because it's a new challenge for a lot of us now to do, to do classes online. And how do you feel like, you know, how has it come along with you?
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this, I think like the online virtual training is a new challenge for everyone. I don't think anybody can say, yeah, this is easy. It's like it's a comfort zone just like anything else that we have to get to. Is it going to get easier with time? Absolutely. I think like the virtual training is super important, and like it helps you kind of realize like, man, do I know this move? Do I know how to do solo drills for this move? Because the truth is like a lot of the time, especially when I started jiu-jitsu, sometimes I'd go to training and there wasn't a single student in class. And I had Matt to myself, and I had to figure out, okay, what drills can I do to get better?
Yeah.
And now that jiu-jitsu is such a widespread sport, that doesn't happen as much. But I've had to go back and remember, oh, this is what I used to do so that I could practice this. This is what I used to do so I could practice that. And I think that that's like a really big challenge, because it's forced us to have to kind of go back in time and remember all the things we've learned, all the drills we've learned, and then kind of share them with everybody. And I think that it's like I think it's kind of a test for us, like, even as a black belt, man, like, you're really still learning. Like, there's so much stuff that I've had to improvise and go, wow, well, what if they don't have a partner? What do I do then? Like, I need to humble myself and go, yeah, like, I need to really think through this. Like, they might not have a partner, and how would I be able to teach this without a partner and not look ridiculously silly?
Yeah, it's some from the students that I hear, because I'll do one-on-ones, via Skype or Zoom, and I had a student earlier who was like, training, and they're like, it's different. I don't have somebody there. Yeah. And I'm like, well, you had that person there to measure, your success. If you counter or block, I was like, but now you have to understand it's different. Now you're drilling, right? And the measurement of success is how smoothly the transitions are. Like for me, lately I've been drilling my S mounts, because I think my S mounts are horrible for the arm bars. And I was like, you're not going to know, because it's different, but you should know your transitions, your flow for it should be getting sharp. By the time you come back, it should just be there. So 100%. My question for you would be, Professor, what would you say to those students, who are kind of in the middle, of like, no one's there, I can't do it, I'm by myself, how would you get those people, what would you say to those people to, like, show up to the online classes and still, train?
I would say the same thing that I would say to them on, like, right before they started doing jiu-jitsu. There was a point of time where you were in hesitation before even walking into a jiu-jitsu school. Like, that element of fear is always going to be there, and that element of self-judgment is always going to be there. But what's made you as good as you are at jiu-jitsu in whatever particular part of this journey you're in, what made you that good is the decision to ignore that voice and walk in and go, let me take my first class. And then even when you were shy after that first class, you said, okay, let me sign up. And then you went the next day, even though it was scary. And every day it got a little bit less scary, and it made a little bit more sense. So to those people, I would say, keep doing what jiu-jitsu has kind of taught you to do since day one. Why would you ignore the success story it's created? And I think, like, another thing that I feel people really need to start to take advantage of is, this is a time for not just, like, we focus a lot on physical, the physical part of jiu-jitsu. For example, like, when you and me train together, Tino, it's a great, you destroy me. And, and yeah, I'm scared for my life. But essentially, like, we are both coming at each other, trying to systematically destroy each other. That's the goal of jiu-jitsu. Who can make the other person tap, right? But that doesn't leave a lot of time for you to have introspective, like, moments. Unless, like, once you've been doing it a long time, you can do that. But it can be really difficult, especially if you're a blue belt, white belt. So I think this is a time for introspection, and, like, to realize that jiu-jitsu isn't just done in sparring, and it's not even done just when you do your drilling with another person. A lot of jiu-jitsu has to do with what are your eating habits like?
Yeah.
What's your fitness like? You have the time now to go out for a walk that you might not have gone on, or a jog little by little. Maybe you take in a bike ride, or maybe you do some push-ups every day. You do a couple. This is stuff that when you do a lot of jiu-jitsu, you kind of tend to neglect. And I do too sometimes. I try not to, because I kind of know better from years that you should probably keep your body well maintained so that you can kind of perform the way you want to perform.
Yeah.
But I know you know it's true. Like, if we've been doing a lot of training and a lot of sparring and a lot of teaching, we tend to just do those things, and we're like, oh, like, that'll keep me in shape. And, like, but the truth is, like, it's way different than if you decided, okay, I'm going to go on the treadmill and I'm going to run a mile, or I'm going to walk a mile, or I'm going to go out on the bike. I'm going to do some burpees. I'm going to do whatever it is I need to do. And this is stuff that, like, honestly makes you better. And also, like, watching all these videos and learning from all these world champions, like, study is so important, man. Before you even physically do something, you have to understand it in your brain, in your head. And I think that's something that we all neglect. You, me, everybody. We don't study enough. And I have always tried to like study a lot. Like that's been my goal, to try to study. But I think now I've realized like, okay, I have the time to study now. And now that I'm dedicating that time and energy, I can see how that's going to help me in the future.
Yeah. Man, it's so cool how fast the big guys in Gracie Barra have got together and just, man, got these big names, legends.
Crazy.
Like before I joined Gracie Barra, I would just hear like these names: Fatosa, Almeida, between Professor Flavio and Professor Ricardo, Professor Dracolino. I would hear all these legend names, and man, and now there's a chance to actually like to kind of be like in their classroom, to basically sit there and do it with them. And like, man, this is an unbeatable experience. Like people who live in different states who know about these legends could never actually sit in a class. They can now actually sit in a class and do the drills, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing that the small details these old school guys have.
Yeah, man. It's so true. And I think that what people aren't realizing, and I think they need to, is like, let's say you were training jiu-jitsu. This is content you would probably, a lot of people pay for.
Oh, for sure.
They pay for this content, like BJJ Fanatics, like all these videos they put out. Like this is just free content for you to consume. And I don't think people realize, like, man, like so for example, I had like one of my major injuries, I had a ACL meniscus tear. And during that whole time, all I had was time because I couldn't do much, right? So all I did was watch videos. That's all I did. And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this video as many times as it takes for me to fully understand everything that just went down. And then when I came back from my recovery and I was training, a lot of people were very surprised that I was doing things that I was not doing before my surgery. They were like, wait, how are you doing that? I'm like, well, you watch a video about 75 times and you picture it in your head, and then you just drill it a couple times from practice, from just what you've got in your brain, and you do it a couple times when you get back. You systematically understand it way more than you would if you just saw it once and then just drilled it a bunch of times. I'm not saying don't drill the move a bunch of times, but I am saying if you've seen a move about 1,000 times, odds are when you need to recreate that move, you're probably going to have a good frame of reference to actually go on. And you're going to be able to probably do that move much better than you would have.
Absolutely. A lot of common things from white belts, that come in is like, oh man, I can't see it in my head. Can you show me? I'm more of a hands-on learner. And maybe, I don't know, what do you think, Professor? Is there a certain time where maybe blue belt or purple belt when we no longer need to do it we can still do it physically, but we understand a lot more clear mentally. We can see it in our head and then we can translate it into physically.
I think when we're talking late blue belt, so very mature blue belt and purple belt, I think you can already kind of materialize things for the most part. That's not everybody. Yeah. Everyone's different, right? So I don't want anybody to ever feel discouraged because they can't materialize things that way. Everybody learns different,
Some 4-stripe blue belts like, oh,
I'm not getting it. But I'm not trying to make any blue belts disappear. I love my blue belts. I love my purple belt. I honestly, this is more of like a, if I was going to say 60% of the high level blue belt and purple belt can already kind of like picture things, and that's okay. If you're not on that list, you'll get there.
Yeah.
But I would say that honestly, it comes down to the moment where you just realize that it's just like, it's just study. Like you just really really devote yourself to the knowledge, and it's kind of like, okay, like, how can I make myself better? Like, honestly, man, like, like there's no ego with me. Like when we roll, it's not like, I'm not stingy. Like I'll okay, here's my arm so I can get better at getting out of that. Oh, here's my leg so I can get better. Like Tino's got a great heel hook. When we're rolling no-gi, if my leg is there, he's probably going to take it, you know?
Don't give away my secrets.
Hygienese. But honestly, like, I think that that's like a big part of, like, it really takes a long time to get there, and it's different for every person. But for me, I realize now, if you're training with somebody and they're really good at something, put yourself in whatever they're good at. Because if you can get out of that thing, then you're going to be able to get out of anybody else's. If Tino's got a great heel hook and I put myself there, I'll be ready to tap. But I'm going to try to get out. And if I can get out, that means that I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I'll probably tap. If it's a heel hook, I'm in there, and it's bad, I'm going to tap. But if somebody's good at passing, I'll pull guard on them. If somebody's good at playing guard, I'll put myself super deep into their guard. That's how you get better, and it never changes. Like, it really is like that. You just can't stop doing it.
Yeah. Right. So I was there when you got your black belt, but how long were you from brown to black?
Probably 2.5 to 3 years.
Okay. And what do you feel like was like the big milestone jump from brown to black? Like, looking back now, brown belt, what do you think was like the huge, stepping stone for you?
I stopped being a knucklehead, I think. Honestly, I think in the past 2 to 3 years, I've realized that, like, it's like the ego is all an illusion, man. It's at the end of the day, Tino, if you tap me, like, you tapped me. It's okay. Like, that's how I get better, And I used to, like, really put I used to be a hard-headed guy, man. I competed a lot at my white, blue, purple, and I was diehard, man. I was on the path. Like, I wanted to be a world champion. That was my goal. I was training 2 times a day, 6 days a week, strength and conditioning sessions in between, like, hardcore. And I wouldn't tap to anything, man. You put me in an ankle lock, you're gonna have to break it. Put me in a leg lock, you're gonna have to break whatever you're trying to break. You put me in a wrist lock, have a good time breaking the wrist. Like, I would just go, And I've had a lot of surgeries and a lot of injuries because of how hard-headed I was and how silly I was being. And then I think that when I started to, like, when I moved to Arizona, because Arizona, I feel like people are very kind. I'm not saying people in Florida aren't kind. I just think it's a more abrasive city, I love my city, but at the same time, I think that people showed me their heart in Arizona. And I think that it softened me, and it made me it made me more compassionate and, like, sweeter, I think, even. And I think I realized, like, it's kind of a journey together, and everybody can get better together. It's not about, like, you beating the guy next to you, And I think that from the brown to the black, what I realized was it's more about us and less about me.
Yeah.
And I think that was the moment that was like the big trigger for me, where I was like, okay, like, I get what people mean when they say, like, okay, like, the black belt is it feels different. I think that's what it was,
Yeah, man. When I was there for your promotion to black belt and your speech, man, it was very touching, and I was so impressed. I mean, I already knew, that you're, you love teaching, you're very enthusiastic about teaching, but when your speech, you said, you're willing to do anything for Gracie Barra, that you're there and you want to make the team, better. And I was like, man, like, this is exactly who we strive to be, is to give back. So that was really, really cool, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. And I want to make it clear too, like, guys, like, I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody is. Tino's not perfect. Like, none of us are perfect. I think that what makes what makes you better as a human being is understanding your imperfections, but striving to correct them, even though it's you'll never will. You're never going to be perfect, but you should always strive to be, with the knowledge that you're not going to be. And I know that seems like a tongue twister, but I've been doing this a minute too. And I think, like, that's something that, like, that's jiu-jitsu too, man. That's, like, you're never going to have perfect jiu-jitsu, but every day, even though you're never going to have perfect jiu-jitsu, you still are pushing to try, even though you know you're never not going to accomplish it. You're still trying, and that's all it takes to be. I really think that to be a good person is to just understand that you will never be perfect, but always try to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about any other martial arts, so I'm a little biased when it comes to jiu-jitsu, but man, it's just so many lessons you learn on the mats and training and meeting new people. You can, translate to real life. Like, again, I was speaking to somebody who I do privates with, and I was like, man, and it was a particular move, and I was like, don't go back. I was like, don't go back. And I was like, the same thing in life. You don't go back. You always go forward. So
Absolutely.
always keep that. And maybe I was like, and it just came out, and I thought about, I was like, oh yeah, like no matter what happens, we always got to keep moving forward. And you talked a little bit, about before, with staying active in after your surgery. So let me ask you, everybody has this, or especially like now, it's like, oh, like, don't want to train, don't want to do this. So, man, those days for you, if you ever had those days of like, I don't know, I'm not motivated, what did you do, Professor, to keep yourself motivated to keep going and keep going with jiu-jitsu?
I've never felt that. I'm kidding. Could you imagine, man? That would be the worst answer. Man, I think everybody has days where they're not motivated. And I think that that's normal. And I think it's always okay if you want to take a day off to take a day off. If you want to take a few days off, take a few days off. Like, that's in all factors of life. I think that's important, But I will say, if you find yourself in a position where you've spent a lot of time stagnant and not made any changes and you're having trouble getting off of the couch, I would say set realistic short-term goals, even if it's 5 push-ups. Maybe that will turn into 10 push-ups next week. But don't just go all – I think that's the biggest mistake, and I know you've seen it too, Tino. Like, someone will take a long amount of time off from jiu-jitsu, and then they'll come back and they're like, go 7 days in a row, 5 days in a row. Or like they just go every chance. And I think that's beautiful. Like, I love to see that somebody is so passionate about doing jiu-jitsu that they come back full force. But I think it's important to know your body. And I think it's important to be realistic with your goals. If you're not feeling super in shape, that's okay. So start with 2 days a week, or even 1, depending on where you're at. Like, no judgments. But you start little by little, and then the next week you pick it up, and the next week you pick. I think that that's something I even do. Like, I consider myself sort of in shape. Like, I try to keep in shape. But even me, like, through this situation that we're in, where we're all kind of at home, I found myself not doing a lot of stuff. Like, and then I had to go, okay, like, I'm not gonna, like yesterday, I think I like really started to like pick myself up a little more, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to run about 3 miles right now. That's definitely not on the agenda. Like, it's not. It's just not going to happen. We're going to have to call the ambulance. Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I'll start with a half mile. Like, to some people, a half mile is nothing. But at the end of the half mile, I was like, I'm tired, but I'm motivated because I think I can keep going. Yeah. So I'll stop here, and then next time I'm going to go, okay, maybe 3/4 of a mile. I think that's so true for all facets of this. And I think it's so easy to be like the biggest judge on yourself and be super discouraging to yourself. Like, you came back from a knee surgery not long ago, and right. And when you trained, you were mindful, and you went, okay, like, I'm going to make sure that I train with people who are going to take care of me, and I'm going to make sure not to go crazy. Like you and me trained, and you specifically were like, hey, this knee. And I was like, you're safe. It's not getting touched. Yeah. And I think that that's like, you need to be really mindful of yourself. And I think you need to get the ego out the door. Like, who cares, man? At the end of the day, like, who cares? This is your life. You need to live it in the safest way for you. And I think short-term goals are the way to do that.
Man, when I just got out of my surgery, people were asking me like, that's crazy. Like, aren't you scared? And I was like, no, man. Like, I tell somebody, if something's bothering me or if I heard something, I tell them specifically, like, hey, I'm hurt here, so I'm going to tap. Like, I'm going to tap regardless if you give me a good submission, but I'm going to tap extra right there. And a lot of people are intimidated by that. They're like, hey, like, this guy goes really rough, or, hey, I'm hurting, and this person. And I'm telling them all the time, like, be very communicative with your partner. You know, if you hurt your whatever at work and you come onto the mat, you still want to train. Yes, we want you to train, but you have to be aware of your injury. You have to be aware of your limitations, and also be very clear to your partner. And I was
Yeah.
like, if your partner, you know, specifically goes for that, then call them out. Like, hey, what are you doing? I just told you not to do for that.
No, it's true.
And you know, sometimes it happens. You know, white belt, lower belts usually forget. You know, they get all crazy hyped up. You know, and I was just, man, be very communicative with your partners, so that way we can all stay safe.
Yeah, dude, I think that's so true. Like, I just think that we try to just be the tough guy. I spent a lot of time being the tough guy, bro. Like, I spent a lot of time with like the mean face, like not being like every time I went to a competition, anything, any event, I just had the mean face on. That was just the way I was brought up, the old school war way, you know? And I think that if you do that, that's a great way to just end up getting injured a lot. I think like that's a great way to like end up putting yourself back quite a bit. Now these days, I realize like, hey, like if something hurts, I'm going to tell you, because most training partners care about their training partners. And hey, man, like if I tell you, hey, Tino, my knee is a little messed up, I trust that you're going to respect that, and you're probably not going to yank on my knees. Well, who knows? Who knows what Tino? I'm kidding.
I'm like, who's looking? Now, man, I believe it was Professor Victor that I heard say this, and man, he hit it right on the spot. He says, you know, we need to say, keep our partners safe. He said, because without our partners, we can't train jujitsu. You know, so that was a huge thing that I would tell everybody, you know, just be very, very clear, you know, and if you're hurting, okay, you know, if you really that scared, at least come to practice and watch.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we're doing now. I was
Yeah.
like, you know, you can still be training either mentally or, you know, kind of doing it to your limitation, but you have to know your body. You need to know what you can do, and you can't be scared to try, you know, and it's funny. Like I get this question asked a lot by people who don't train, of course. And they're like, man, what would you do against this guy, and he's big, this? And I'm like, man, you're talking to a jiu-jitsu person. I'm going to be smiling and saying, what the heck? Why not? Let's go try. Like,
yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I think like there's even me, man. I think like dealing with that ego of like, I think I have to put myself in check all the time too. I think like that's life. Like it doesn't matter how successful you get, how good you get at anything. Like you're still going to face the same challenges. And I think that's a stigma. A lot of people believe that like, oh, once you're a black belt, like you just like are this ethereal being or something. Like I'm a human being, man, with flaws and all. Like, bro, like my wife beats me up. Like, it's the truth, man. And like, I think I don't like that stigma. I think that I am a black belt because of the time I've invested and an understanding of myself. And I think that, you know, like, I think that all of our students are capable of achieving that. It just takes a lot of focus, a lot of dedication. But I also think that it's important that you realize, like, once you get your black belt, that doesn't mean like, oh, like you've done it. Like, that's it. Like, man, I recently have even done this thing where we have all these amazing gyms in the Valley, right? And I love my students in Scottsdale, but I go to Peoria to train so I can train with some of the people in Peoria, or I go to North Phoenix and I'll train with some of the people in North Phoenix if I can. Like, I don't do it as often as I would like, but I try to do it because it will make me better, and it's outside of my comfort zone. It doesn't matter who you are. If you go to a different space and you're not comfortable there, it kind of messes with you a little bit. Not a bad way, but like it'll improve you because it's not your comfort zone. When you were at Scottsdale, you at one point got comfortable going into work every day. And then when you went to another school, your feelings are a little bit different now.
Yeah.
It's a different space. You got to get used to it. And I think that becoming a black belt, what it's taught me is to live in that uncomfortable space as much as possible, because that's what got me there. And I implore everybody to do that. But while you do that, communicate with each other, because it will make that uncomfortable space a safer space.
Yeah, that's a good point. Man, when I got my brown belt, it seems like every roll is to the death. Like every white, blue, and purple has it out for me. Like it's insane. And I remember asking Professor Dave Weber, I was like, Professor, like, this is insane. I was like, when I was a purple belt, like, it was just like messing around, still doing techniques. I was like, now the same guys I was rolling with like 2 days ago are like now trying to kill me. And he's like, man, he's like, it's even worse as a black belt. And so let me ask you a question that's a very a common, question, but unfortunately not a lot of white belts know this question. But for a white belt or even a blue belt, is the proper etiquette to go hard on your professor or your coach, or should you go slow and let your professor and coach work?
I think it depends, man. So like, I was always taught as a white belt, you always match the black belt's pace.
Okay.
That was always what I was taught. But I've also trained with certain black belts that are extremely high level. I remember I was always taught that, but then I trained with Braulio one day, and I was doing that and obviously getting destroyed.
Yeah.
like I was gum on his shoe, it was distracting. But one thing he said to me was, you're very technical, but you need to push. You need to go. And when he told me that, the next roll I went, he still destroyed me, but at the end of the roll, he went, good job. I think we communicate to our students in different ways. And I think that if you're matching pace and we go, good job, then that's fine. You can continue to match pace. I think if we say, you got to push, don't be scared. This is the time. That's kind of us giving you the consent to go, push yourself. I think it's like a consent thing. And I think it's kind of like when you talk to your grandparents, you respect your elders kind of thing. But if your grandpa says something offhand, then, it's okay. This guy is, it's a crazy uncle. But, but honestly, I've always been taught to match pace. And I think that's the kind of respectful thing to do generally. But if a black belt communicates to you, let's go, man, you can do it, let's go. It's kind of like if you don't do that for that, they want you to get better. And they also want you to challenge them a little bit so they can keep getting better. So I think that's the way to treat that,
I think it's also the same thing, depending on which rounds. So, if you're in a regular class setting and a specific training, if you get partnered up with a black belt, try to do whatever the specific training is. And then once it's, sparring, and then that's when the communication, hey, I'm going crazy, or hey, bring it. But man, competition training with Gracie Barra, Arizona, has been no joke. It's go hard. Even, when I sparred with Professor Flavio, I've sparred, throughout the years. And it's always been like that, match the pace. But, man, when it came to competition training, it was just no, man, everybody goes and everybody's going. If you're going to slack off, you're going to get left behind, or you're going to get submitted a lot. So, it's definitely the class, the setting, what's going on. You just got to know. But that's always been a huge question. For me, man, hearing hey, don't go hard, he's a black belt, have respect. And then I heard other black belts no, man, it's disrespect if you don't go hard.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's so weird.
Yeah. I think what I do in my classes is and you've seen plenty of my classes, I'll start the class and I'll either preface it with one of two things. All right, guys, let's be technical. Let's be good at this. Let's do, or I'll go, okay, guys, we're going to push today.
Yeah.
I want cardio. I want you pushing your lungs. I want you pushing your body. I want you pushing yourself. So it's kind of I think it depends. It's like you said, you're very clear. That's very intelligent observation on your part. And I think if you're in a certain environment and you're in a class and the black belt teaching the class is let's go, let's push, let's go, let's push. That's the mood. But if we're in a class and it's definitely probably, let's say, a Wednesday class, everybody's a little burnt out from the Monday to the Tuesday, and we're just trying to be technical, learn some new moves, and improve, I think that you need to take that example too and go, okay, let me take it a little easier today, when I roll with this higher belt. But I think that that's very much it's like you said, you have to be observational, look at your setting. If you're in competition training, man, all those guys, they're trying to become world champions, man. Yeah. Trying to become Pan Am champions. They're trying to make a name for themselves. It's a beautiful thing. But that road is full of hard work,
Yeah.
you know, and I have so much respect for them. You know, I've been on that road before, you know, and I know what it takes. It's so grueling, and I have so much respect. I wish I could go to those classes, but unfortunately work gets in the way. But that's why I try to go to the other gyms so I can train with those guys separate, so I could, you know, have them smash me, you know? So I think like it really is ambiance, like, you know, feel out the night. If it's a chill night, be chill.
Yeah, man. I don't know. For me, I think my white belt and blue belt, I was pretty timid. I was pretty intimidated by the black belt, you know, and just like don't do anything. Just the black belt's gonna submit you and just lay there. And then once I started getting purple, I was like, okay, like now it's kind of out of respect to go harder with the black belt or with the brown belts. And then now I'm a brown belt, and I'm like, okay, these black belts are gonna come for me because I'm getting close to black belt. I was like, so now there's no choice but to pick it up, you know, with the black belts. But when I go with lower belts, you know, and I'll tell them like, hey, you know, come on, like, especially for sparring, like during the class or techniques, I'm like, hey, slow down, take your time, like,
get better.
Yeah. But when it's actually live sparring, I'm like, come on, man, like this is the only way you're gonna get good is by going, and you're gonna mess up. We all mess up.
Yeah.
Just keep going, see what you did, and then keep going strong.
Yeah. And I think that's an improvement in today's day. Like, it used to be that every sparring round for me when I was coming up, like every sparring round was to the death, like murder. Like, I think now we've done something that all sports have started to do, like football. My wife is a volleyball player, her as well. Like, all sports have realized that you can't go 100% all the time, always, every day for everything. It's not sustainable. It kills morale, and you can get injured. And I think Gracie Barra does a really good job of going, this is the time for that. This is the time for learning, you know, because they're very different things. Learning is different from just war, you know, and I think that we do a good job of balancing learning with the war. And I think that's something I didn't get. I had to pursue the learning more for myself. I had to go out there and pursue the learning. And I was constantly taught war, you know, like to the death. Like, you've got an armbar, boom, go, don't look back. You got to pull until the ref pulls you off, you know, like that. So that's the old mentality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the old school, because I came from it and I have nothing but respect for all my professors who come from that background. But I do think that Gracie Barra has found a more sustainable way to train, where you balance both of those aspects, mitigate injuries, and over a long course of time, improve more.
Man, if you could, because we talk about old school and new school, and like obviously we know what old school and new school is. Yeah. So if you could kind of break down the old school, what's old school and what's new school for like the new belts out there, if you could break it down.
I would say drilling for technical ability and for like refinement of technique without the intention of harm to your partners is definitely like a new school principle. In the old school, it was drill at all costs, and you push your body to its limit without much regard for outer circumstances, potentially even your partners. Yeah. Every day was competition. Every day was, you know, like, you need to be able, the mentality is you fight the way you train. So if you train soft ever, you're going to fight poorly, you know? And I think that there's some truth to it, a portion of it, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that it's also true that if you train at that measure at all times, then you're going to probably get injured. And when you're injured, especially a long injury, you've had them, I've had them, you're not training at all. And if you're not training at all, then you're definitely not going to fight very well in whatever situation you need to be fighting. So I think that what is new is communication. I think that's a big thing. Like, I share all my techniques with you. You share all your techniques with me, because it will make us both better and come up. That wasn't something that was super done. It was not done super common. It was not something that people were very keen on. It was more like, these are my secrets. Don't come over here, stay away. And you keep your secrets to yourself. Now it's about open communication. I think the internet is a part of that. I think also people are just more level-headed in terms of like wanting to get better together. It's about community.
Yeah.
I think it really comes down to kind of that. Like, it's more of like a team goal-oriented thing and less of an individual, like, I need to get better than Tino, or I need to get better than this other person. It's more about like, if I make them better, then I'll get better too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
man, because in Fridays we used to have meetings at Gracie Barra Phoenix, and we used to have discussions that would break it down the middle, and it was hilarious, man. To have Professor Victor as the villain. Oh my god, dude, I love Professor Victor. Oh, I wish you were there. Tears were running down our eyes, man. And one of the discussions was, which was better, old school or new school, right? And Professor Victor comes from the old school guys, so he's like, but he that day got separated for the new school, and he's like, oh man, like he's like trying to think of what to say, but Professor Pugh from Gracie Barra Chandler had this crazy saying that he said that comes from their school in Brazil, and I never heard it, but it was different. But he said, if a guy comes in your school and he's very technical, you know how to beat that. He's on by porrada, by old school, like just. And I was like, oh man, like that's a mentality like I've never experienced before, and it's just that old school, man, of like,
yeah,
and go hard.
So, that happened to me. I when I went to Gracie Barra, I was in a place that was like very flow rolls, technical application, a lot of spinny berimbolo stuff, but more new school, I would say. And then when I went to Gracie Barra, the instructor there, a very talented instructor, he was much more old school, like very, very old school. And I went and I found that technically speaking, I had a lot of advantages. But then I realized as the rounds went on, these guys that just went porrada, that just went push, they were like draining me. And then into the third round, to the fourth round, I started to realize I'm getting smashed now, destroyed. Because, there's balance. I think that's important. Like, you need to know when to just push and enforce, be an enforcer in that moment. But there's also a moment to be really technical so that you have the energy to do that in that separate moment, right? Mm-hmm. So I got destroyed by the old school jiu-jitsu at one point in time when I was just a blue belt. I had just gotten my blue belt. And I'd gotten destroyed. And then I realized, like, okay, like, I need to learn some of this porrada they speak of, because I didn't speak Portuguese.
Oh, you speak Portuguese now?
Yeah, I do. I had to learn it because I had to make sure the Brazilians weren't talking bad about me.
Oh my God, man. Speaking of that, so I come from Gracie Barra, Tucson, and I don't know how it got passed around or who found it, but it was a YouTube phenom, Renato Lejara.
Oh, yeah. Renato Lejara.
And so everyone's like around the school, like, boy, right? And I'm like, well, it never clicked to me why they say it, but I've always heard them, and I always thought it was funny. But when I came up to Gracie Barra, Arizona, and I see all the Brazilians, and the first one I ever heard was Professor Pugh, and man, I can't even make the imitation of him, but man, he was like, oh, so I was at the competition, boy, I was looking for my keys, and boy, I couldn't find it, and I'm like, trying not to laugh because all I could think was Renato.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the Brazilians are very relaxed, very chill, but very straightforward, no BS. And that's something like, like again, Professor Victor, something he was teaching the low champs, which I respected so much. He would emphasize guys, when you shake your hands, and kids, these are the low champions too, and I believe I'm not sure if it was the low champions one, but it's definitely the low champions too. He's like, when you shake hands, make sure you look your partner in the eyes.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that we don't, that's not taught a lot of these days.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Like, I think that there's a lack of, no, not a lack, but like, I think it's important that people really communicate in terms of like what is still etiquette. And I think to an extent, it's like you say, like a lot of Brazilians are extremely honest and genuine people. A lot of Americans are too, right? But I definitely think I love Victor. Like Victor really is the definition of himself. Like Victor is never anyone but himself, and I respect that so much. Like that's why he's my brother, And I think like that's something that I take from him, and like I try to apply to myself too every day. Like never hide who you are, and be direct, and always make sure that when you do anything with anybody, you give them the attention they deserve, because you would want them to give you the attention you deserve too.
Yeah.
So I think, man, it's just crazy. Like I think like that's why, and I think a lot of the Brazilians we interact with are very talented jiu-jitsu practitioners and teachers, and professors, and I think that it's not necessarily even just that they're Brazilian. I think that it's just like that jiu-jitsu mentality they have, and you become more comfortable being yourself in your own skin, and you want to help people. I really think that this is a martial art that kind of teaches you how fragile you are as a human being. And then when you become stronger and you empower yourself, it just gives you that wanting to like help somebody else in any factor of their life,
Yeah. So listen, man, let's get into what I call the competition rounds. So I'm just gonna throw some questions at you, just right off the book, and try to answer them as best as you can.
I will. I'll try.
All right, man. So what is your favorite submission?
Back, choke from back.
Any choke?
I like all the chokes.
Okay.
I really like, honestly, I really like the Matalão.
Hey, okay.
I really.
Now, what submission do you hate being caught in? And you can't say my heel hooks.
Something. You know what? I would say knee bar.
Ooh, yeah.
No, Kimura.
Like Kimura.
Biggest weakness. Kimura. Biggest weakness. Yeah.
So, what is your favorite guard? I guess you would say. What's your favorite guard to work from?
I would say, if we're talking which one I practice the most, reverse de la Hiva.
Reverse de la Hiva. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, which guard do you hate to be stuck in?
I hate being stuck in 50-50. Like, I don't like being stuck in it. I like being in 50-50, but I don't like being stuck in 50-50. I don't think anybody likes being stuck in 50-50.
No.
Yeah, imagine you were like, oh, I love it. It's so much fun.
And we have Gracie Barra Phoenix for our competition classes. We'll start off with some kind of training, and they'll like one of the weeks it was 50-50.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I was like, you can do this in 50-50, and they were just it was insane, man.
Yeah. No, it's a very frustrating guard to be stuck in. Like,
for sure. All right, so last question. What's Professor Jonathon's cheat food? What's your cheat, man? What's your go-to bad food?
Man, there's so many. I cheat a lot, especially in quarantine. Unfortunately, I've been doing better, but man, you know what? My favorite food is a cheeseburger. Like all types of cheeseburgers. Like I could eat. Honestly, man, my family hated it. We would go to like an Italian restaurant when I was a kid, and I would order a cheeseburger. Like we go to a Chinese restaurant, I'd order a cheeseburger, which was very questionable and suspect now that I think about it. But,
so who has the best cheeseburger here in the Valley?
Man, I'm not like an authority on it, because like I haven't invested as much time on my cheeseburger study. But I think that there's a place in the Scottsdale quarter that I like a lot, and it's Doghouse, and they make a really good cheeseburger there with they use a Hawaiian bun as the bread. Yeah.
Man, Doghouse is gonna blow up now, but
yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. Only takeout right now, though, guys. Only takeout.
Well, Professor, thank you so much, man, for coming on the line and doing this. This hopefully is gonna inspire a lot of people stay with the training, you know, and to stay strong. And man, do you have anything else you'd like to say or any farewell messages to the students or team members?
Yeah, I've got two. The first is, guys, I know this time is like a really frustrating time for a lot of you. And I can tell you, as somebody who's been really frustrated a lot of times, that, you know, in situations like this, it's about getting creative, whatever that means for you. You know, I think it's really important that you stay active, because at the end of the day, when this all ends, because it will end, it's going to. It's a guarantee. Like nothing. Like it really is. There will be a moment where we're back to normal, that you're ready and you're going to be better. And I think that you need to invest in yourself. And whether that means virtual classes that are available for you, content that you can just watch on GB Online, or physical activity and like wellness and taking care of how you eat, all that stuff. Like, this is stuff you should be thinking about, because at the end of the day, you might not be investing in the physical aspect of the sparring and all that stuff in jiu-jitsu, because maybe that's not something you want to do. But you can definitely invest in yourself so that when we're back to normal, you're ready to go and you can just keep getting better. And the second thing is, I think it's really important that we support our people. And I think Tino is like an example of like someone I consider like a really exceptional guy. And I honestly feel that he is like a really positive guy. And when you meet somebody like that, guys, I really think it's important that you promote them in that way. So I think it's important. He's doing these interviews, guys. Share it, you know, like it, promote it. I think it's super admirable in this like internet age to see somebody trying to share more information and tell people stories. Only he's not no benefit for him, guys. He's honestly just doing this because he wants people to meet different people and share the story. So thank you so much, Tino. I really appreciate you, man. I always have, man. I've always felt like your family to me.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. You know, let me borrow some of your personal time, and I hope your wife's not mad at me.
She is. She is.
Man, you might have to break out the black belt. Show where the black belt is. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And man, let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody. All right, bye.